We've already got the and see, I've already got the spooky time um, set up for us. So, and speaking of, let me. Don't want to lose my bookmark. That suck. Anyway, um, for those of you just joining us, we have been reading from the Wizard for Hire Omnibus, the second book, Full Moon, in the Dresden series. We have read chapters 1 through 18. And so we're fixing to start up again today. And if you would like, go grab your blanket, get in front of the fan if you're still having warm weather, cuddle up under it if you're not, get your favorite warm beverage, and sit back and chill. This is a good time to do that, ladies and gentlemen. So here we begin. Chapter 19. From out in the hallway there came a scream that no human throat could have made. A sound of such fury and insane anger that it made my stomach roil and my guts shake. It's trying to get overcast, which is not helping me any. Gunfire erupted, not a rattling series of individual detonations, but in a roar of furious thunder. Bullets shot through the wall somewhere near me and smashed out a couple windows in the Special Investigation Office. By the way, as a slight synopsis of what has transpired so far, we have a beast on the loose in the police station. I was on my last legs, exhausted and terrified half crazy. I hurt all over. There was no way I was going to have the focus, the strength I needed to go up against that monster. Easier to run, to plan something out, to come back when I was stronger. I could win a rematch. It's tough to beat a wizard who knows his enemy, who comes prepared to deal with it. It was the smart thing to do, but I've never been known for my rational snap judgment. I gripped the blasting rod, started sucking in all the power I could reach, scooping up my recent terror, reaching down into the giggling madness, scraping up all the courage I had left, and pouring it into the kettle with everything else. The power came rushing into me, purity of emotion, complex energies of will, and raw hard-hittedness, all combining into a field, an aura of tingling, invisible energy that I could feel enveloping my skin. Shivers ran over me, overriding the pain of my injuries, the ecstasy of power gathering my sensations into its heady embrace. I was pumped, I was charged, I was more than human, and God help anyone who got in my way because he would need it. I drew in a deep, steadying breath, and I simply turned to the wall, pointing my rod at it, and snarled, "Fuego!" Power lanced through the rod in a flood of scarlet light that charred a 6-foot circle of wall into powder and ash and sent it flying. I stepped through it, wishing for my duster for a second, just for the cool effect it would have. The hallway was a scene out of hell. 2 officers were hauling a third down the hall toward me, while 3 more with shotguns fired wildly around the corner. I don't think the rescuers had taken the time to note that the body they were dragging away from the combat had no head attached to it. One of the cops screamed as the riot gun he held ran empty, and something I could not see jerked him forward. Around the corner, out of my vision, there was a horrible shriek, a splash of blood, and the 2 remaining shooters panicked and fled up the hall and toward me. The loup-garou came around the corner after them, hauling one of the men down and ripping its claws across his spine with a simple savage motion that left the man quivering on the bloody tiles and hardly made the beast miss a step. It set its eyes on the next man, one of the plainclothes SI detectives, and hamstrung him with a slash of his jaws. The beast left him howling on the tiles and hurled toward the retreating pair, still frantically dragging their corpse away. I stepped forward between the fleeing men and the beast and lifted the blasting rod. "I don't think so, bub." The loup-garou crouched down, its massive body moving with unholy grace, its head and forequarters soaked in blood. I saw his eyes widen and its muscles bunch beneath its dark brown pelt. Power gathered at my fist, red and brilliant, and the length of my blasting rod turned an incandescent white. Energy seethed through me as I prepared to release hell on earth at the monster. My teeth ached and my hair stood on end. I tensed every muscle I had, holding it all back until I could put every scrap of strength I had into the strike. And then there was the bark, bark, bark of Murphy's little target pistol, and the loup-garou's rear flank twitched and threw out little bursts of blood. Its head whipped to one side, back down the short hallway, and its body followed suit faster than a serpent. The fuck? Just randomly decided to turn my stuff off there. There was a surge of enormous muscles, a howl of rage, and the thing was gone. I spat a curse and ran down the hall after it. The hamstrung officer lay on the floor screaming, and the other man, the one who had had his spine ripped out, was choking and twitching, unable to draw in breath. Red anger flooded me, rage that I realized in some dim part of my mind was as much part of the beast and its blood-maddened frenzy as it was of me. I rounded the corner in time to see Murphy standing in front of a litter of bodies, take a last shot at the loup-garou, and then it snarled as she vanished underneath its bulk. "No!" I screamed and ran forward. Carmichael beat me to it. His round belly had been ripped open. There was blood all over his cheap suit, though his food-stained ties somehow remained untainted. His face was grave pale and set with the sort of intensity that only a dying man could have. He held a bent, twisted riot gun in his hands, and he hurled himself onto the loup-garou's back as though he weren't 60 pounds overweight and long past his agile years. He wedged the riot gun between the loup-garou's jaws, but the beast turned and slammed Carmichael into the wall with a sickening crunch of bone and gout of blood from the man's mouth. Murphy slithered out from between the beast's paws on her shoulder blades and buttocks, her cute little cheerleader's face set in a berserker's fury. She jammed the end of her little gun beneath the thing's chin. I saw her hands convulse on the trigger, but instead of flash of light and a dead loup-garou, there was only the whooping of alarm and a look of shocked surprise on Murphy's face. The gun had run empty. Pardon me for just a second. I hate when that happens. I get mid-sentence and I get choked up for something. Give me 1 moment. Sorry about that. "Murphy," I shouted, "roll." She saw me with the blaster run. Her eyes flew wide. The loup-garou shook its shoulders free of Carmichael's corpse and bit completely through the riot gun, thrashing its head left and right. Murphy scuttled sideways across the tiles and through the hole in the wall the beast had made earlier. It took one snap at her and then whipped its head around to snarl at me. I saw the crimson light reflected in its eyes as I focused every bit of fury in the world at the tip of my rod and shouted, "Fuego!" I saw the reflected image in the beast's eyes brighten to a nuclear white. In front of a tall, lean figure of black shadow, saw the flood of energy as big around my hips rush down the hall like a lance of red lightning and hammer into the beast. Sound rushed along with it, a mountain's roar that made the gunshots and screams of the evening seem like a child's whisper in comparison. The power lifted the loup-garou, hurtling it over the wounded figures moaning on the floor, down the hall into the holding, through the security door, through the cell door immediately across from it, and then through the brick exterior wall of the building and out into the Chicago night. But it wasn't over yet. The lance of power carried the loup-garou across the street, through the windows of the condemned building across from the station, and through a series of walls within, each one shattering with a red brick roar. Before the red fire died away, I could see the far side of the building across the street and the lights of the next block over through the hole the loup-garou had made. I stood in a blood-spattered hallway filled with the moans of the wounded and the wail of the escape alarm. The sounds of emergency vehicles drifted into the building through the ragged hole in the wall. A slender young black man stood up from the floor of the cell the loup-garou had smashed through and gawked at the hole in the wall and then followed the destruction back down the hallway to where I stood. "Damn!" he said, and it had the same hushed tone to it as the holy word. What, Ron Simmons made an appearance? What? I mean, that was such a Ron Simmons moment. It just really was. I'm sorry. Damn. Murphy struggled out of the hole in the wall to pitch down on the floor of the hallway, gasping. I could see the bulge of bone warping out the skin of her lower arm where it had been snapped somehow. She lay white-faced and gasping, staring at Carmichael's crushed body. For a moment, I couldn't do anything but stand there gawking. There was another hole in the wall where the loup-garou must have crashed back into the hall, putting itself between the two groups of policemen where they couldn't risk shooting it without hitting one another. Or maybe they had. Some of the men who were down looked as though they had bullet wounds. From outside, over the sirens and the moans and the noise of the city night, I heard a long, furious howl. "You've got to be kidding me." I breathed. My limbs felt like bruised jelly, and I turned to limp back around the corner and found Rudy there, staring, a paper cup in one hand and the Snoopy doll in the other. I took both from him and stalked back into the hallway to the second hole the loup-garou had made. I found what I was looking for at once, blood on the inside of the hole in the wall where the beast had plowed through it. The loup-garou's blood was thicker, darker than human fluids. and I scooped it into the paper cup before going back down to the hallway. I swept to clean a place with my foot, set down my blasting rod, got out my chalk, and drew a circle on the ground. Rudolph approached me, his head jerking back and forth between grisly corpses and splashes of blood. "You, my God, what are you doing?" I slapped the Snoopy down in the middle of the circle and smeared the beast's blood over its eyes and mouth, over its ears and nose. "Thaumaturgy," I said. "What?" "Magic," I clarified grimly. "Make a symbolic link between the little thing," I nodded at the Snoopy dog, "and a big thing. Make it happen on the smaller scale, and it happens on the larger scale." "Magic," Rudolph echoed. I glanced up at him. "Go downstairs. Send the emergency people up here, Rudy. Go on. Send them up here to help the wounded." The kid twitched his eyes from the bloody Snoopy back to me and jerked his head in a nod. He then turned and fled down the hallway. I turned my attention back to the spell I was working. I had to keep the rage and anger I felt from the working of my magic. I couldn't afford to flood my spirit with grief, fury, and the thoughts of vengeance for the dead men, for their deaths, for the pain that would be visited on their families. But God is my witness, I wanted nothing more than to try to set that thing on fire and hear it burn somewhere outside. I tried to myself that it wasn't McFinn's fault. He was under a curse and not to blame. Killing him wouldn't bring back any of the dead men in those bloody hallways, but I could keep any more men from dying tonight. And I could do that without killing it. In retrospect, it was just as well that I didn't try to murder McFinn. Magic like that takes a lot of energy, certainly more than I had. I would probably have killed myself in the effort to finish off the Loup-Garou, not to mention that the council would get their feathers ruffled by the concept, even though technically McFinn wasn't a human being at the moment. Killing monsters isn't nearly as much as an issue with the council. They don't hold with equal opportunity mercy. Instead, as my vision started to fade, I began to chant nonsense syllables in a low musical refrain, focusing the energy I would need inside the circle I had closed around me. It wasn't until later that I would realize that I was babbling a chant of Ubrachia Ubrius Ubrium to the Peanuts theme music. I tore off a strip of my own bloody jumpsuit and bound it across Snoopy's eyes, its ears. I bound up the ends of its fuzzy, cute little paws and its mouth as though muzzling it. I felt the spell grow and prepare itself, and when it was ready, I released the power and broke the circle, feeling it flow out into the night, following the blood back to the Loup-Garou, winding itself around the creature, biting its eyes, fouling its ears, lashing around its jaws, and forcing them shut, crippling its taloned paws. The spell would hamper and confuse the beast, hopefully drive it to ground where no one could disturb it, keep it from venting its rage upon the people of the city, and it would last until dawn. The energy flowed out of me, left me feeling empty, exhausted, and dizzy. And then people were all around me, emergency folk in uniforms, cops and paramedics and firemen, oh my. I stood up from my circle, grabbed my blasting rod, and shambled off blindly. I walked past Carmichael's corpse, stunned. Murphy was rocking back and forth over it, weeping, shaking, while a man tried to slide a blanket over her shoulders. She didn't notice me. Carmichael looked relaxed in death. I wondered for a moment if he had a family, a wife who would miss him. He died saving Murphy from the beast. He died a hero. It seemed so empty to me at that moment, meaningless to be a hero. I felt burdened on the inside as though the fire I'd hurled at the creature had scoured away all the gentle feelings that I had been there, and left a fallow ground behind where only red emotions could flourish. I stumbled past Murphy and Carmichael and turned to walk out of the building, dimly realizing that in the confusion I might actually have fair odds of making it back outside where Tara and Susan would be waiting in the car. No one tried to stop me. The stairs were tough, and for a minute I thought I might just lie down and die on the first landing, but a helpful little fireman lent me a hand down to the first floor, asking me several times if I needed a doctor. I assured him I was fine and prayed he didn't notice the handcuffs still dangling from either wrist. He didn't. He was as wide around the eyes as everyone else, stunned. Outside was chaos. People were struggling to establish some sort of order. I saw a couple of news vans rolling up the street while other people crowded around trying to see. I stood in the door, dismayed, trying to remember how to walk down steps. And then someone warm and gentle was at my side, taking some of my weight. I let her have it and closed my eyes. I smelled Susan's hair when I inhaled, and it made me want to wail and hold on to her, to try to explain what I had seen, to try to clean the stains from inside my head. All that came out was a little choking sound. I heard Susan speak to someone else, and another person got on the other side of me and helped me down the stairs. Tara, I thought. I dimly remember them guiding me through the hectic area of the front of the police station, around ambulances and shouting men, around policemen who were trying to get the bystanders to move away. I heard Susan explain to someone that I was drunk. Finally, there was quiet, and then we were moving among cars in a parking lot, cool like wind leaving on cool metal shapes, cool rain coming down on my head and my hair. I tilted my face up to feel the rain, and everything swam crazily. "I've got you, Harry," Susan murmured against my ear. "Just relax. I've got you. Just relax." And so I did. Pardon me, this weather change really has done a number on my sinuses. I apologize. By the way, as a friendly reminder, for those of you that may or may not be lurking, no sounds nor blurps or anything like that will work on this scene, so please save your points or commands. If you would like to say hi, just say hi in the chat, but feel free to lurk as well. You don't have to say a word. By the way, I do need to count chapters here to see how far. Do. Okay. I may or may not divide this into two parts. We'll see. When I get to 29, I'll, or 2 hours, I'll let you know how I feel. Chapter 20. I awoke in a dark place. It was like the inside of a warehouse or a big underground garage, all black with a smooth, even floor and a pool of bleak, sterile radiance in the middle of it that came from a source I could not see or identify. I felt like hell and looked down to see myself covered in scratches, bruises, welts, blood, bandages, and ill-fitting clothing. I wore none of my implements or devices, and there was a curious sense of distance between me and the pain of my injuries. I was more than aware of them, but they seemed to be something that was merely noted in passing and unimportant to my life as a whole. I stood just outside the circle of light, and it seemed to me proper that I move forward into it. I did, and as I did, there appeared to be a circle opposite me. Myself, only better groomed, dressed in a mantle duster of black leather, not the sturdy, if styleless canvas that I wore. My double's pants and boots and shirt were all black as well, and they fit him as though tailor-made rather than off the rack. His eyes were set deep, overshadowed by severe brows, and glittering with dark intelligence. His hair was neatly cut and short and the short beard he wore emphasized the long lines of his face, the high cheekbones, the straight slash of his mouth, the angular strength of his jaw. He stood as tall as I and long-limbed as I, but carried with him infinitely more confidence, raw knowledge, and strength. A faint whiff of cologne drifted over me, cutting through my own sour sweat and blood smells. My double tilted his head to one side, looked me up and down for a long minute, and then said, "Harry, you look like hell." "And you look like me," I said, and limped toward him, peering. My double rolled his eyes and shook his head. "Hell's bells, you make me sick with how thick-skulled you are sometimes." I'm going to try to differentiate their voices here. Give me 1 second. I'm going to adjust something. Yeah. Okay. I can do this better now. I took my glasses off, believe it or not. They're more of a hindrance than a help. Because believe it or not, my glasses do not help my reading at all. But I can see if there's somebody talking in chat, so it's okay. He took steps toward me, mirroring my own movements. "I don't look like you. I am you." I blinked at him for a few seconds. "You are me? How does that work?" "You're unconscious, moron," my double said to me. "We can finally talk to one another." "Oh, I get it," I said. "And you're evil, Harry, lurking inside the good Harry, right? And you only come out at night?" "Give me a break," my double said. "If you were that simple, you'd be so insufferably boring, you'd probably blow your own head off. I'm not evil, Harry. I'm just subconscious, Harry. I'm your inner voice, bub. Your intuition, your instinct, your basic animal reactions. I make your dreams. I decide which nightmares to pop in the old psychic VCR at night. I come up with a lot of good ideas and pass them along to you when you wake up." "So you're saying that you're wiser than me, smarter than me?" "I probably am in a lot of ways," my double said. "But that's not my job. That's not why I'm here." "I see. So what are you doing here then? You're going to tell me how I'm going to meet the three spirits of Harry, past, present, and future?" I asked. My double snorted. "That's good. That really is. The banter thing, I can't do the banter very well. Maybe that's why you're in charge." Of course, if I was in charge more often, you'd get laid a lot more. But no, that's not it either. Can we speed this along? I'm too tired to keep on guessing, I complained. No joke, jerk. That's why you're asleep. But we don't have long to talk, and there's some issues we need to work through. There are some issues we need to work through. He said issues in the British manner. Issues. Issues to work through. I said, what? Am I my own therapist now? I turned my back on my double and started stalking out of the lighted circle. I've had some weird dreams, but this has got to be the stupidest one yet. My double slipped around me and got in my way before I could leave the circle of light. Hold it. You really don't want to do this. I'm tired. I feel like shit. I hurt. And what I really don't want to is waste any more time dreaming about you. I narrowed my eyes at my double. Now get out of my way. I turned to my right and started walking toward the nearest edge of the circle. My double slipped in front of me again, apparently without needing to cross the intervening space. It isn't that simple, Harry. No matter where you go, there you are. Look, I've had a long night. I know, my double said. Believe me, I know. That's why it's important to get some of this out now before it settles in, before you blow a gasket on your sanity, man. I'm not worried about it, I lied. I'm as solid as a brick wall. My double snorted. If you weren't getting pretty close to crazy, would you be talking to yourself right now? I opened my mouth, closed it again, shrugged. Okay, you've got a point. I've got more than that, my double said. Things have been happening to you so quickly, you haven't had time to think. You need to work through some of this, and you need some hard thinking fast. I sighed and rubbed my eyes. All right, then. I said, what do you want to hear? I noticed that there seems to be an ad break incoming fairly soon, surprisingly. So I may have to pause here for a second. My double gesture, and there was Murphy as she had appeared in the hallway of the police station, her flesh of her bicep tended out by broken bone, her face pale, spotted with blood, and streaked with tears and hopeless anguish. Murph, I said quietly, and knelt down by the image. Stars above, what have I done to you? The image, the memory, didn't hear me. She just wept silent, bitter tears. My double knelt on the other side of the apparition. Nothing, Harry, he said. What happened at the police station wasn't your fault. Like hell it wasn't. I'd have been faster, gotten there sooner, or if I'd told her the truth from the beginning. But you didn't, my double interjected. And you had some pretty damn compelling reasons not to. Ease up on yourself, man. You can't change the past. Easy for you to say. No, it isn't, my double said quietly. Concentrate on what you will do, not what you should have done. You have been trying to protect Murphy all along instead of making her able to protect herself. She's going to be fighting these kinds of things, Harry. You won't always be there to babysit her. Instead of trying to play shepherd, you need to play coach and get her into shape to do what she needs to do. But that means telling her everything, my double said. The White Council, the Never Never, all of it. The council won't like it if I tell her and they hear about it. They might consider her a security risk. And if you don't make her able to understand what she's fighting, something's going to eat her face some dark night. Murphy's a big girl. The council had better be careful they decide to go messing with her. My double considered Murphy for a moment. You should ask her out sometime, too. I should what? I said. You heard me. You're repressing big time, man. This is all getting way too Freudian for me, I said. Instead of pretending to walk away again, I was confronted with an image of Susan as she had appeared on the steps of the police station, tall in heels and dress suit, elegant and beautiful, her face stretched with worry. Think she's going to get a good story out of this? My double asked. Oh, that's below the belt. That's not why she's seeing me. Maybe, maybe not, but you're asking yourself that question, aren't you? My double gestured to himself and to me demonstratively. Shouldn't that make you ask a few more questions? Like what? I asked. Like how come you don't trust anyone? My double said. Not even someone like Susan, who has been going out on a limb for you tonight. He lifted a long-fingered hand, stroked at the short beard with his fingertips. I'm thinking this has to do with Elaine. How about you? And then there she was, a girl of elegant height, perhaps 18 or 19 years of age, gawky and coltish, all long legs and arms, but with a promise of stunning beauty to add graceful curves to the lean lines of her body. She was dressed in a pair of my blue jeans cut off at the tops with her muscled thighs, and my own t-shirt tied off at her abdomen. A pentacle amulet identical to my own, and if less battered, lay over her heart between the curves of her modest breasts. Her skin was pale, almost luminous, her hair a shade of gold brown like ripe wheat, her eyes a startling storm cloud gray in contrast. Her smile lit up her face, made her eyes dance with the secret fires that still, even after all the years, made me draw in a sharp breath. Elaine, beautiful, vital, and as poisonous as any snake. I turned my back on the image deliberately. Before I could see it change into the Elaine I'd last seen, naked, festooned in swirling paints that lit a savage aura to her skin. Her lips had been stained brilliant, wet red, curving around, twisting, rolling phrases as she chanted in the midst of her circle. Its sigils meant to focus pain and fury into tangible power that had been used to hold a foolish young man helpless while his mentor offered him one last chance to sip from a chalice of fresh, hot blood. All right, give me a hot second to pause for the calls. We do have an ad break run right quick. I don't want anybody to miss anything. We got it for about another minute and a half or so. It surprises me that it pounced on me that quick. I haven't been running that long. Nor no skippies. Which kind of sucks. I don't know why I really think that hub is failing, and I'm going to have to swap it out for the old one. Because it does this shit. I'm not even touching my desk. And my hub keeps flipping on and off the keyboard and mouse, just at random, like something's hitting it and it's not. Which is really freaking weird. And it's been doing that off and on here lately, and I'm about ready to pull out that old hub and put it back in there. I only use 3 spots on it anyway, so. Pardon me, I don't know where that came from. And it is looking like it's tuning up to rain again, so if I lose power, lose internet, I am so sorry. I'm going to tell y'all ahead of time. I really should take a drink of water while we're on the break, too. Actual water. No imitation. You know, there's some days I just kind of want to take time out and be peaceful, because it's ever since I moved out, it's been so quiet. Anyway, back to action. Welcome back from the ad break, folks. That's been over for a long time, I said, my voice shaking. My double answered me quietly. It isn't over. It isn't over yet, Harry. As long as you hold yourself responsible for Justin's death and Elaine's fall, it still colors everything you think and do. I didn't answer myself. She's still alive, my double said. You know she is. She died in the fire, I said. She was unconscious. She couldn't have lived through it. You'd have known if she died and they never found a second set of bones. She died in the fire! She's dead. Until you stop pretending, my double said, peering before me, and try to face reality. You're not going to be able to heal. You're not going to be able to trust anyone, which reminds me. My double gestured, and Tara West appeared as I'd seen her crouch behind the garbage bin at the rear of the gas station, naked, her body leaning feral, leaves and bits of bracken in her hair, and her amber eyes gleaming with cold, alien intelligence. Why in the hell are you trusting her? I haven't had much choice, I snapped. In case you haven't noticed, things have been sort of desperate lately. You know she's not human. My double said, you know she was at the scene of the crime in Marcone's restaurant where Spike was torn up. You know she has some kind of hold on a group of young people, their favorite targets of the creature of the Never Never. In fact, you can be pretty damn sure that she's a shapeshifter of one kind or another who isn't telling you the whole truth, but still comes asking for your help. Like I can throw stones for not telling the whole truth, I said. My double said in answer, but you haven't confronted her about what she isn't telling you. Those kids, who the hell were they and what are they doing? What is she getting them into? And why is she keeping it a secret from McFinn? He didn't recognize the names when you dropped them. All right, I said. I was going to talk to her anyway as soon as I wake up, my double chuckled. If things are that leisurely, these murders are still happening and they're starting to pile up. Are you serious about doing something about them? You know that I am. My double nodded firmly. I'm glad we agree on something. Let's look at some facts. McFinn couldn't have committed all those murders. Most particularly, he couldn't have committed the most important murder, the industrialist, Marcone's partner. He and his bodyguard were killed the night of the full moon, and Spike was wiped out the night before the full moon. McFinn doesn't have any control over his shape-shifting. He couldn't have been the one to pull off those murders. So who could have, I asked. His fiancée. The men were ripped apart by an animal. But the FBI lab said that wasn't a true wolf that did it. Werewolves are slightly different from real wolves, my double said. How do you know that? I demanded. I'm the intuition, remember? My double said. Think about it. If you were going to change yourself into a wolf, do you think you could hold that image in your head perfectly exact? Do you think you could make all the millions of subtle, tiny changes in skeletal and muscular structure? Magic doesn't just work. A mind has to direct it to shape it. Your emotions, your feelings toward wolves will color it too. Change the image and the shape. Ask Bob. Next chance you get, I'm sure he'll tell you I'm right. Okay, I said, I'll buy that, but the FBI said there were more than one set of tooth marks and prints, too. McFinn explained some of them. During last month's full moon, he probably killed some people when his circle went kablooey. And the group Tara had, they called themselves the Alphas, could explain the rest of them if they were shapeshifters. Now you're catching on, my double said, approval in his tone. You're smarter than you look. Do you think that they were behind spoiling McFinn's containment circle, the fancy one with all the silver and stuff? They had the knowledge to do it through Tara. Tara could have let them in, provided an opportunity, my double said. But they didn't have a motive. I said, why would they have done it? Because Tara told them to, maybe? I frowned and nodded. She is a creature of the never who knows what's going through its head. It doesn't necessarily have to be understandable by human logic. My double shook his head. I don't buy that. I saw the way she looked at McFinn and how she sacrificed herself to divert the FBI and the police so that he could escape. Your instincts are telling you that she's in love with McFinn and she wouldn't act against him. Yeah, well, you told me that about Lane, too. I shot back into the pang of memory going through my chest. That was a long time ago, my double said defensively. I've had time to get keener since then and less easy to distract. All right. So where does this leave us? I don't think we've run into the real killers yet, the ones who ruined McFinn's circle and whacked the mob guys on the non-full moon nights. I squinted at my double. You think so? He nodded and stroked his beard again. Unless the Alphas are doing it without Tara knowing, and they look a little too bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to be doing that. I think it's someone else entirely, someone trying to set up McFinn and take him out of the picture. But why? Maybe they didn't want him putting the Northwest Passage project through, or gee, maybe it's because he's a freaking werewolf, Harry, and someone caught on to it and wanted him dead. You know, there are organizations who would do that, some of the Venatori Umbrorum, members of the White Council, others who are in the know. But you don't think I've seen them yet. I don't think you've picked them out from the background, my double said. Keep your eyes open, all right? Which brings us to the next topic of discussion. Does it? My double nodded. Threat assessment. You've got all kinds of things staring you right in the face, and you're not noticing them. I don't want you to get killed because you're too distracted. He glanced to one side, frowned, and said, we're almost out of time. We wouldn't be if you weren't such a wise ass. Bite me. I double said, don't forget Marcone. You pissed him off by not taking the deal he offered you. He thinks the killers are coming after him next. And he might be right. He's scared, and scared people do stupid things, like trying to off the only man in town who has a chance of stopping what's going on. Let me worry about Marcone, I said. I am you, and I'm worried. Next is the cops. Some of Murphy's people are dead. There's going to be hell to pay once she gets that arm fixed. And someone's going to remember that you were around, and with your luck, they won't remember that you kept even more people from dying. You see Murphy and the police again, you better be careful or you're going to get shot to death or resisting arrest. I'll be careful, I said. And one more thing, I double said. You have forgotten about Parker and the street wolves entirely. Parker needs you dead if he's going to remain in control of his people. Yeah, you'd have thought he'd have been more on the ball about than this. Exactly, my double said. You've been hiding and away from your apartment for a while, but you show up in public again, you can bet that Parker will be on your trail and think. He knew the real deal between you and Marcone, and he's a petty thug in Chicago. There's probably a connection between them, and you've been too dumb to think of it. Stars above, I muttered. It's not as if the situation's very complicated. No pressure, right? At least you're willing to deal with it now instead of just closing your eyes and pretending they can't see you. Be careful, Harry. It's a real mess, and you're the only one who can clean it up. Who are you, my mother? I asked. My double snapped his fingers. That reminds me. Your mother, he broke off, glancing up and around him, an expression of frustration coming over his face. Oh, hell. And then someone was shaking my unwounded shoulder, shaking me roughly awake. I blinked open my eyes in shock, and all the pains of my body came flooding back into me with renewed energy and agony. My brain reeled for a few minutes, trying to shift gears. I was sitting in the passenger seat of Susan's car. We were rolling down an expressway somewhere, but rain was clouding the view of the skyline, so that I couldn't orient myself to where we were. The glowing numbers on the dashboard clock said that it was only a few minutes after 9. I'd had less than half an hour's sleep. There was an old beach towel wrapped around my wounded foot. My face felt cool, as though someone had wiped it clean. Is he awake? Susan said, her voice high and panicky. Is he awake? I'm awake, I said blearily, opening my eyes. Sort of. What? This better be good. It is not good, Tara said from the back seat. If you have any power left, Wizard, you should prepare to use it. We are being followed. Sorry, I had to pop my back for a second. Chapter 21. I rubbed at my eyes and mumbled some vague curse at whoever was following us. Okay, give me a minute. Harry, Susan said, I'm almost on empty. I don't know if we have a minute. It never rains, I moaned. Tara frowned at me. It is raining now, she turned to Susan. I do not think he is coherent. I snorted and looked around blearily. It's a figure of speech. Hell's bells, you really don't know anything about humans, do you? Are you sure there's someone following us? Tara glanced back at the traffic behind us. 2 cars back and 3 cars behind that one. 2 vehicles are following us. How can you tell? I asked. Tara turned those odd amber eyes back to me. They move like predators. They move well, and I feel them. I narrowed my eyes. Feel them on an instinctual level? Tara shrugged. I feel them, she repeated. They're dangerous. The taste of blood was still in my mouth, annoying input like static on a phone. Of all the people who might be chasing me in cars, I could only think of a few who would trigger the supernatural senses of an inhuman being. I thought it might be a pretty good idea to listen to what my dapper double had to say. Susan, I said, I want you to get off the expressway. Her dark eyes flashed beneath the streetlights as she looked at me and then down at her fuel gauge. I have to in the next couple of miles anyway. What do you want me to do? Pull off and get to a gas station. She flashed me another nervous look, and I had the time to note that she was gorgeous, like some sort of Latin goddess. Of course, I might have been a little less than entirely objective. Then what? She said. I checked my foot and idly took off my remaining boots so that my hips would be parallel to the floor while I was standing. Call the police. What? Susan exclaimed and guided her car off the freeway and down an exit ramp. I felt around in the jumpsuit's tool pouch until I came out with a little sports bottle with it. My second potion in it. Just do it, I said. Trust me on this one. Wizard, Tara said, her voice still utterly calm. There is no one but you who can help my fiancé. I shot Tara an annoyed glance. I'll meet you where you hold your Cub Scout meetings. Harry, Susan said, what are you talking about? She pulled the car down the exit ramp onto a one-way access road. I understand what you're doing, Tara said. I would do the same for my mate. Mate? Susan said indignantly. Mate? I am most certainly not hit. I didn't get to hear the rest of what Susan said because I grabbed my blasting rod in one hand, the potion in the other, opened the car to the door to the car, unfastened my seatbelt, and rolled down to the shoulder of the road. I know. It sounds really stupid in retrospect, even to me, but it made a sort of chivalrous cockamamie sense at the time. I was pretty sure that Parker and his cronies and the street wolves were shadowing us, and I had a precise idea of how dangerous they'd be. I had to assume that they were even worse during the full moon. Susan had no idea of the level of danger she was in, and if I stayed near her, I would only draw her more deeply into it. And Tara, I still didn't trust Tara. I wasn't sure that I wanted her fighting at my back. I wanted to deal with my pursuers myself, to deal with my own mistake myself, and not to make innocent bystander like Susan pay for it. So I, sort of threw myself out of a passenger seat of a moving car. Don't look at me like that. I'm telling you, it made sense at the time. I held out my arms and legs in a circle, and as though I were trying to hug a barrel, and scrape, rip, bumpity, whip, and thud. Everything whirled around the hole while I managed somehow to keep my sense of direction, to maintain my momentum largely in a roll, and to angle myself toward the dubious comfort of the thick weeds at the side of the access road. By the time I came to a stop, I was among freshly crushed plants, all damp and cold from the rain, and the smell of mud and gas and asphalt and exhaust were clogging up my nose. There was pain everywhere, spreading out from my shoulder and my foot, whirling dizziness, blackness that rode on my eyelids. I tried to force them down. I struggled to remember exactly what I had planned on doing when I had thrown open the door to Susan's car. It came to me in a moment. I jerked the squeezed top of the sports bottle open with my teeth and crushed the plastic bottle, forcing the potion inside of it through the narrow nozzle into my mouth. 8 ounces of cold coffee, I thought dimly. It tasted like stale cardboard and 2 old pizza and burned coffee beans, but as it went down my gullet I could feel the power in the brew spreading out into me, alive and active, as though I had swallowed a huge hyperkinetic amoeba. My fatigue quite simply vanished, and energy came rushing into me like it sometimes does at the end of a really good concerto or overture. The pain receded down to levels that I could manage. The soreness lifted out of my muscles, and my cloudy, cloggy thought processes cleared as though someone had flushed my synapses with jalapeno. My heart rate surged and then held steady, and I came to the abrupt conclusion that things weren't as bad as I had thought they were. I pushed myself up using my bad arm just despite the injury that Agent Ben had dealt me, and brushed myself off. My jumpsuit was torn and there was fresh blood on it. Scrapes from the asphalt and darkening bruises on my arms and legs that I could already see, annoying little bastards. I held them in contempt. I shook my shield bracelet loose around my left wrist, took my blaster rod in my right hand, and turned toward the access road. I drew in a breath, smelling the odor of the rain on the asphalt, and more distantly the crisp, clean scent of autumn, almost buried by Chicago's stink. I considered how much I loved the autumn and composed a brief poem about it as I watched the traffic force Susan's car along and out of sight. I turned my head toward to view a pair of cars cut frantically across traffic and cruise down the access road. The lead car was a 2-ton pickup, one of the really big ones, and Parker sat behind the wheel, looking around wildly until his eyes lit upon me, standing there in the tall weeds beside the road. I smiled at him and contemplated his shocked expression in my own satisfaction. Then I drew in a breath and my renewed will with it, lifted my rod in my right hand, murmured a phrase in a language I didn't know, and blew the tires off its fucking truck. They all went at once in one satisfying thump, complete blowouts resulting from a sudden heating of the air inside the tires. A pretty slick spell to pull on the fly, heating up the inside of the tires of a moving vehicle. The truck slewed left and right, and I could see Parker frantically rolling the steering wheel in an effort to maintain control. 2 people sat in the cab with him, faces I didn't recognize from here, and they evidently didn't believe in seatbelts. They were tossed about inside the truck like toys. The truck careened off the road in a spray of gravel, went past me into the weeds, hit some sort of ditch, and went into a ponderous roll. There was an enormous crunching sound. Car wrecks, when they happen for real, and not on television, are surprisingly noisy. They sound like someone pounding empty trash cans out of shape with a sledgehammer, only louder. Parker's truck tumbled over twice, crunched into the side of the hill, and lay on its passenger side. "Well then," I said with a certain amount of professional pride, "that should take care of that." I spoke too soon. There was a brittle grinding sound, and the windshield of the truck exploded into a hectic spiderweb pattern. The sound repeated itself, and the safety glass shattered outward, followed by a foot wearing a heavy black combat boot. More glass flew outward, and then people started crawling out of the pickup, battered and bloody. Besides Parker, there was the lantern-jawed lout whose nose I'd flattened a few days ago, his nose now swollen and grotesque, and the bloodthirsty woman who had led the group into the berserk fit of lust. They were all dressed in the same variants of denim and leather, and cuts and bruises from the tossing they had were much in evidence. Parker led them out of the truck, looked back at it stunned, and they looked at me, and I saw fear flicker in his eyes, and it brought out a satisfied surge within my own pounding heart. Served him right, the jerk. I spun my rod around once, and my fingers started whistling a bit from the overture to Carmen, and walked toward them through the grass, annoyed that I was limping, and that I was dressed in a ridiculous blue jumpsuit that left inches of my arms and legs bare. Flatnose saw me and grunted out some sort of Neanderthal noise of surprise. He drew a handgun from inside his jacket, and it looked tiny in his hands. Without preamble, he started squeezing off shots at me. I lifted my left hand, forced more of my boundless energy through the shield bracelet, and sang a few phrases of what I supposed could have been taken for Italian to verbally encase the spell. I continued walking forward as bullets bounded off the shield before my hand in cascades of sparks, and I even had enough breath left over to keep on whistling Carmen. Parker snarled and slashed at Flatnose's wrist on the edge of his hand in a martial arts style movement. I heard a bone break very clearly, but Flatnose only jerked his hand back toward his body and flashed Parker a scowl. "Remember why we're here," the shorter man said. "He's mine." "Hello there, Mr. Parker," I called cheerfully. I suppose that the image I presented as I walked toward them would have been would have been comic, except for all the blood and the big smile I felt spreading across my face. It seemed to have somewhat intimidating effect on the street wolves at any rate. The woman snarled at me, and for a second I could feel a wild, savage energy, the same that had surrounded the frenzying lycanthropes at the Full Moon Garage, starting to build in the air around me. I gave the bitch an annoyed look and slashed my hand at her, at the air, drawling, "Dispendorus." I forced out an effort of will I might have found daunting on another night, one when I wasn't feeling a little less all-powerful, and the woman jerked back as though I had slapped her in the mouth. The energy she had been gathering fractured and flew apart as though it had never been. She stared at me, growing tense and nervous, and reached a hand toward a knife and a case at her hip. "Let's have none of that nonsense, as I was saying," I continued. "Hello there, Mr. Parker. I know why you're here. Heard about the ruckus on a police scanner and came down by the station looking for me, right? I hate to disappoint you, but I'm not going to allow you to kill me." Flatnose scowled and said, "How did you know that?" Parker shoved the heel of his hand across Flatnose's mouth and a sharp blow, and the big man shut up. "Mr. Dresden," Parker growled. He eyed me up and down. "What exactly makes you think you could stop me from killing you?" I had to smile at the man. I mean, you have to smile at idiots and children. "Oh, I don't know," I chuckled. "Maybe because the second you step out of line, I'm going to wreck you a whole lot worse than that truck. And because in just a couple of minutes, the police are going to be arriving to sort you out." There was a momentary flash of dimness, where the street lights seemed to fade and the rain to grow very cold, and then it was gone again. I blinked a little blood out of my eyes and renewed my smile. "Mustn't let the children see weakness." Parker snarled his thin lips into a smile. He had bad teeth. "The cops are after your ass too, Dresden," I said. "I don't believe you." "And once they're here, I'm going to mysteriously disappear," I said. "Just like, gosh, magic. But you guys," I forgot what I was going to say for a moment. There was something nagging at the back of my mind, a detail I'd forgotten. "I can smell your blood, wizard," Parker said very quietly. "God, you've got no idea what it smells like." Parker didn't move, but the woman let out a little mewling sound and pressed against Flatnose's side. Her eyes were focused intently on me. "Get a good whiff," I managed to say. "It's the last time you'll smell it." But my smile was gone. A creeping vine of uncertainty was beginning to crack the wall of confidence I'd been enjoying. The rain was getting colder, the lights dimmer. My extended left arm began to ache. Starting at the wounded shoulder, my hands shook visibly. Pain started leaking in again from every part of my battered body. Sandy returned and rushed the potion. The potion was giving out on me. I had pushed myself way too hard while the first euphoria was going over me. Dispelling the intimate aura of rage and lust that the woman had begun to gather over them had been a feat I would never have considered in a stable frame of mind. There were just too many unknowns. My heart was laboring along now. I started panting. I couldn't get enough breath to slow down my rocketing heartbeat. Parker and his two companions grew tense together all at once, with no visible signal passing between them. I could feel that wild energy again coursing down to the lycanthropes beyond the rain clouds overhead. I swear to you, I could see the cuts on their body from the crash closing up before my eyes. Flatnose rolled the wrist that had just been broken, flexed his fingers at me, and gave me a grim smile. "Okay, Harry," I told myself, "keep calm. Do not panic. All you have to do is hold them here till the cops get here, and then you can bleed to death in peace, or get to a doctor, whichever hurts less." "You know, Parker," I said, and my voice had a fluttering quaver to it, a fast, desperate quality. "I didn't really mean to show up at your garage. Hell, I wouldn't even been there at all if Denton's goon hadn't turned me on to the idea." "That doesn't matter now," Parker said. His voice had a quiet, certain tone to it, and he visibly relaxed. He smiled at me and showed me more of his teeth. "That's all in the past." Then Parker took a step forward, and I panicked. I jammed the rod at him and snarled, "Fuego!" I funneled my will through it, and to hell with what the council thought of me killing someone with magic. Nothing happened. I stared in disbelief. First at Parker, then at the blaster rod. My fingers went numb as I looked at them, and the rune-engraved ash rod fell to the ground, though I tried a clumsy grab to catch it. Instead, my weight came down on my torn foot, and the ripped muscles went into sudden cramp that set fresh agony up through my leg. It buckled and pushed me forward into the weeds and the mud. The last wisp of my shield vanished as I fell. My magic had failed me altogether. Parker laughed a low and nasty sound. "Nice trick. Got another?" "One more," I rasped and fumbled at the jumpsuit's tool pouch. Parker walked slowly toward me, confident, relaxed, and moving like a man 30 years younger than he. My fingers were aching with cold, torn from the asphalt and numb from all the pain, scrapes, and bruises, but the handle of my chief special was easy enough to find. I drew it out, thumbed back the hammer, and pointed it up at Parker. His eyes widened, and his weight settled back on his heels, not quite retreating, but not coming any closer either. From 3 feet away, even down in the mud, it would be tough to miss him, and he knew it. I didn't pick you for the kind to carry a gun, he said. The rain plastered his greasy hair down over his eyes. Only on special occasions, I said back. I had to delay him. If I could only hold him in place just for a few minutes, the cops would show up, and I had to believe that they would. Because if they didn't, I was dead meat, maybe literally. Stop where you are. He didn't. He took a step toward me, so I shot him. The gun roared and bullets smacked into his right kneecap, exploding in a burst of blood and flying chips of bone, and the leg went out from under him, hurling him into the muddy ground. He blinked once, surprised, but the pain he must have been feeling didn't seem to register. He scooted back a couple of feet and stared at me for a second, reassessing me. Parker then drew his legs beneath him, ignoring his ruined knee, hunkered down on his heels, and rested his elbows on his thighs as if we were old friends, keeping his hands in plain sight. You're tougher than you look. We tried to catch you at your apartment, you know, he said, as though I hadn't just shot him. Excuse me. But the cops were all over it. Policeman said you'd gotten arrested, but I guess you got away. We paid the jailer to let us know where they rounded you up. He grinned his snaggle-toothed grin and looked almost friendly. Hell, kid, we were hanging around the bar 2 blocks from the station for almost 2 days, just hoping to be there when they brought you up the steps. Drive by, he pointed his finger at me in a bang-bang motion and let his thumb fall forward. Sorry to disappoint you, I mumbled. I was working hard not to give in to the shakes, the cold, or the darkness. I knew he was up to something, but there was too much to deal with, too much injury, too much exhaustion, too much blood on my hands. I squinted past him to see Flatnose and the woman still in the same spot, both of them watching me with the intent look of hungry animals. Parker chuckled, and instead everything goes to hell at the station. Gunshots exploding. Sounds like a war inside, which was fun to watch, and then we see you stumbling out of the middle of it, right there in front of the cops station, with a cute little piece of on either side helping you down the stairs. We just rolled right after your ass. I hope you're insured. Parker shrugged. The truck wasn't mine. He plucked up a long blade of grass and traced it over the ruin of his knee, painting it red with his blood before crushing it up in his fingers. Most of my people are out by the lake tonight. They've got to let off some steam during the full moon. Damn, but I won't take you out right there in front of all of them. You've got a real badass reputation, kid. Can't have everything you want, I said. I blinked rain or blood from my eyes. Parker's smile widened. You know, kid, I think there's something you don't know. In the distance, I could hear the sound of sirens speeding down the freeway toward me. Hot damn, I thought. I finally did something right. Oh, yeah, I asked, staring to feel a satisfied thrill of victory. Parker nodded and looked off to one side. There were 2 cars behind you. And something smashed down on my right hand, making it go numb and sending the gun to earth. I looked up and had time to see another like it was from the garage lift a lead pipe wrapped in electrical tape and bring it down hard at me. The woman screamed and rushed toward me. She had steel-toed boots. Flatnose lumbered after her and was content to use the barrel of his pistol as a dumb club. Parker just sat there squatting on his heels and watched them. I could see his eyes. My blood spattered onto his cheek. I don't like thinking about what they did. They didn't want to kill me. They wanted to hurt me, and they were good at it. I couldn't fight. I couldn't even curl up into a ball. There was that much spirit left in me. I could hear myself making choking sounds, gagging on my own blood, sobbing and retching in pathetic agony. I would have screamed if I could have. You hear stories of men who kept silent through all the torture and agony that anyone inflicts on them, but I'm just not that strong. They broke me. At some point, the mind says no more, and it gets the hell away from all that pain. I started going there to that away place, and I wasn't sorry at all to do it. I could dimly hear Park shoving people off of me. Once I stopped moving, he broke a few more of their bones, and they backed off with snarls of rage. He was walking on the leg again, although my shot must have torn the joint to pieces. At his orders, they picked me up and carried me to another car, just lugged me along like a sack of broken parts. Duct tape went around my wrists and ankles, knees, elbows, and mouth. Then they threw me in the trunk. Parker reached up to close the lid. I didn't have enough energy to move my eyes. I just stared out, letting them focus wherever they would. I saw a face behind the wheel of a car going past on the access road, just a sedan, something that would blend in with all the cars in the city. The face was young, strained, sprinkled with freckles, the hair red, the ears big. Roger Harris, FBI, Denton's red-headed lackey. The sedan rolled by without even slowing, and Harris didn't even look over at me, didn't even break his surveillance. I wasn't the only one, it seemed, who was being followed that night. Parker slammed shut the trunk, leaving me in darkness. The car started the car started going just as the sirens began to arrive at the access road. My captor's car bounced along, made the casual getaway, leaving me in agony more thorough, sickening, acute than any I'd felt before, and behind the gag I started laughing. I couldn't help it. I laughed, and it sounded like I was choking on raw sewage. The pieces had all fallen into place. Chapter 22. There's a point after which one cannot possibly continue doing complicated things like thinking and keeping one's eyes open. Blackness ensues and everything stops until the body or the mind is ready to function again. The blackness came for me and I welcomed it. When I started to wake up, I smelled motor oil. That in itself boded ill. I was seated upright and an upright metal beam pressed into my back. I felt something constricting my wrists and my ankles, duct tape still perhaps. There was cold concrete floor beneath me. I was aching everywhere and stiff, but there was something soft over me, a blanket maybe, and I wasn't as cold as I might have been. My first emotion was a vague surprise that I was still alive. The second was a cold, nasty little shiver. I was a prisoner, and as long as I was, survival was by no means certain. First things first, then, make it certain. Find out where I was, devise a plan, and get my skinny wizard ass out of there. After all, it'd be a real pity to die when I finally put tabs on who had gotten me into this mess, as well as who was responsible for the killings that couldn't be attributed to McFinn, and probably who had set him up as well. To that end, I opened my eyes and tried to get a look at my surroundings. I was in the enemy stronghold, the Full Moon Garage. It was dim inside, and from what I could hear, it was still raining without. There was a dirty, warm blanket over me, which came as something of a surprise. There was also a little stand with a pages stuck together, with a mostly empty plastic bag of what it took to be blood dripping down a plastic tube that vanished behind me, out of my sight, and presumably ended at my arm. I wiggled my feet out from beneath the blanket. My legs had been duct taped together above and below the knee and the ankle. My bitten foot had been wrapped in clean bandages and covered with my bloodied sock. In fact, I found a number of clean bandages on various cuts and scrapes, and I could smell faintly, as though my nose had been given a while to get used to it, the sharp medicine smell of disinfectant. I couldn't feel Murphy's sawed through handcuffs on my wrists, and I found myself vaguely missing them. At least they'd been familiar, if not comfortable. So not only was I alive, but I was in considerably better shape after presumably several hours of sleep and medical attention. But that didn't explain who had done this to me or why. I looked around the dimness of the garage. My eyes were now adjusted to it, and even so, there were pockets of shadows too deep to see into. An L-shaped ribbon of yellow light showed beneath the door to the manager's office, and the sound of rain on the corrugated roof was a low, soothing roar. I closed my eyes, trying to orient myself and to determine what time it was from the feel of the air and the sound of the rain. Late afternoon, early evening, I couldn't tell for sure. I coughed and found my throat dry but functional. My hands were bound, and I didn't have any way of making a circle. Without a circle, I couldn't use any delicate magic to free myself. All I had access to was the kaboom sort of power, which, while great against nasty loup-garou and other monsters, it wasn't much good for getting rid of several layers of duct tape resting within half an inch of my own tender skin. Magic was out. Did I ever tell you about my dad? He was a magician. Not a wizard, mind you, but a magician. The kind you see at old-fashioned magic shows. He had a black top hat, a white rabbit, a basket of swords, and everything. He used to travel around the country performing for the kids and the old folks, barely making enough to scrape by. After Mom died during childbirth, Dad had the job of raising me all by himself, and I guess he did the best he could. He meant well. I was real young when he died. I refused to believe Chon Zagharos's insinuations until I looked into them further, of a brain aneurysm. But I learned a thing or three about what he did before then. He had named me after 3 magicians, after all, the first of which was Houdini himself. And one of Houdini's first rules was that means to escape was always within your grasp. Positive attitude. It's a fact that a human being can escape from just about everything given enough time. The only question was how much time did I have left? The duct tape was strong and it was fastened tightly, but it was also cheap, easy to transport, and simple to apply. Even though it was wound about me in multiple layers, it wasn't the best thing for holding people, or else the cops would use duct tape, not handcuffs and manacles. It could be beaten. So I started looking for ways to beat it. A little writhing showed me that my hands weren't fastened as tightly as they could have been. I could feel a sharp pain in my forearm, and guessing it was from the IV. They had to loosen the tape on my arms to get the needle into my forearm. I wiggled my shoulders, which set the wounded one to aching fiercely. The tape put pressure on my wrists and tore the hair from my arms with an audible ripping sound, and I clenched my teeth over this particular torment. It hurt, and it took me the best part of 10 minutes, but I got my wrists and hands free. I ditched the IV needle while I was at it, imagining some deadly fluid flowing down the tube into my veins, and I flexed my arms repeatedly and got them free. My fingers were numb, stiff, and not really responding, but I started fumbling at the tape on my legs the best I could, trying to get tears started so that I could just flex my legs and get the whole thing to go at once. It took more effort than I thought it would, but I finally flexed my legs, thankful to the jumpsuit kept me from losing stripes of hair from my thighs and calves, if not from my ankles. My legs were much stronger than my arms, so snapping the layers of duct tape on them was a lot simpler and quicker, just not simple or quick enough. Before I'd gotten out of the last loop of duct tape, there was a click-clack and the office door swung open, accompanied by a murmur of low voices and a tinny din of old-time rock and roll music. I panicked. I couldn't run. My ankles were still bound. By the time I got free, I'd struggled my feet. They'd be on me. So I did the next best thing. I whipped the blanket up and over me, snaked my hands behind my back behind the pole, grabbing up the IV needle as I went and concealing it in my hand, and bent my head far forward as though I was still asleep. I still don't get why we can't just put a bullet in him and dump him, said the harsh voice, but no nasal tone at all. Flat nose. Stupid, Parker growled, his voice like sandpaper. 1, we don't do it without having ordered the others here to see, and 2, we don't do it until Marcone's had a chance to see him. Marcone, Flatnose said with a sneer in his voice. What's he want with him? Good question, I thought. I kept my head down, my body relaxed, and tried to think sleepy thoughts. Marcone was coming here? Who cares? Parker answered. I made sure that he would live through the day. Either way, I wanted him here tonight. No skin off my teeth. Flatnose grunted. Chicago sees a lot of mobsters. Marcone's just one more, but one call from him and this wizard character gets a reprieve. Who is this guy, huh? The freaking governor? I had to make him kind of nasal, I'm sorry. Always thinking with your balls, Parker said, his voice calm. Marcone isn't just a mobster. Running Chicago is just his sideline, see? He's got businesses all over the country, and he owns people from here to the governor's mansion to Washington and back. And he's got more money than God. He can set us up, take us out, have the police on our ass anytime he wants. You don't screw with someone like that lightly. There was a pause, and Flatnose said, Maybe, or maybe Lana's right. Maybe you're getting soft. Marcone isn't one of us. He doesn't give us orders. The Parker I knew 10 years ago wouldn't have thought twice of letting Marcone to fuck off, telling Marcone to fuck off. Parker's voice became resigned. Don't do this, man. You were never good enough, even when we were young. The Parker you knew 10 years ago would have gotten all of us killed by now. I kept you in cash and dope, women, whatever you wanted, so settle down. I don't buy it, Flatnose said back. I think Lana's right. I say we off the skitty son of a bitch right now. I felt myself tense and prepared to make a run for it, hopeless or not. I'd rather get killed trying to get away than trying to pretend I was asleep. Back down, Parker said, and then there was a scuffling noise of boots on concrete. I heard a couple of grunts and a abrupt yelp and smelled sour sweat and stale beer as Flatnose was forced to his knees less than a foot away. He kept making a small noise of pain, thick with tension, as though Parker were holding him in some kind of lock. I forced myself to relax, not to just stagger up and start running, but I felt a bead of sweat trickle down my face. Parker snarled over Flatnose's whimpers. I told you, you were never good enough. Challenge me again in public or alone, it doesn't matter, and I'll rip your heart out. The way he spoke, the threat was eerie, not with the hissing, villainous emphasis one would expect, but in calm, measured, almost bored tone, as though he were mentioning switching out a carburetor or changing a light bulb. It was a rippling sort of sound, Flatnose let out a howl of pain that dissolved into a string of dog-like whimpers. I heard Parker's boots move a few steps away. Now get up, he said. Call Tully's and get the others back here before the moon rises. We'll have blood tonight. If Marcone isn't polite enough, we'll have a lot more. I heard Flatnose make his way to his feet and shuffle off in slow, haphazard fashion. He vanished into the office and closed the door behind him. I waited for a few moments, hoping that Parker would wander off and I could make my escape, but he didn't. Damn it. I was running out of time. If I waited until the rest of the lycanthropes returned to the garage, I'd never be able to get away. The numbers would be stacked too high, and if I was going to make it and break for it logically, the time was now. Of course, I was still bound. By the time I got my legs free, Parker would be on me, and I'd just listened to him disable a man twice his size that threatened to rip his heart out. He'd meant it, too, I could tell. When I'd looked inside him, I had seen a dark, angry place, the source of all that power and force of will. He could tear me to pieces with his bare hands, literally, and what was worse, he would, and I'd have to have a head start if I was going to run. I could make him mad, maybe antagonize him into going to get a baseball bat or another roll of duct tape from my mouth. Then I could run and make a clean getaway. The one problem with that plan is that he might just rip my heart out on the spot, but nothing ventured, nothing gained. I didn't have time to be picky. So I lifted my head up enough to squint at him into the semi-darkness and said, "You certainly have a way with people. You must have read a book or something." My voice startled him, and he spun with the reflexes of a nervous cat. He stared at me for a long minute before starting to relax. "Oh, so you're alive. It's just as well, I suppose." Mostly I was just tired. Thanks for the sack time. He showed me his teeth. "No problem. Checkout's in a couple hours." That scared me enough to make a rational man pee. But I only shrugged. "No problem. Good thing your people can't hit. They might have made me uncomfortable." Parker laughed a rough laugh. "You got balls, kid. I'll give you that. At least till Lana gets her teeth in them later." This wasn't going well at all. I had to find some way to piss him off, not make him laugh. "How's the knee?" Parker narrowed his eyes. "A lot better. Didn't quite heal up before sunrise, but I figure it'll only take an hour or so after the moon comes up." "I should have aimed higher," I said. Parker's jaw clenched down a little. "Too late now, kid. Game over." "Enjoy it while you can. I hear your people are getting a little sick of you. Do you think Lana will be the one to tear your balls off when they put you down?" His boot came out of nowhere and hit me in the side of the head. It threw me hard to my right, and if I hadn't clenched my arms at the last minute, it would have thrown me into the floor and revealed my lack of bonds. You just don't know when to keep quiet, do you, wizard?" "What have I got to lose?" I shot back at him. "I mean, hell, it isn't though all those people that looked up to me have turned against me, right? It isn't as though I'm getting too old to manage." "Shut up," Parker snarled, his eyes taking on an eerie greenish cast in the darkness, a trick of the light, and it kicked me again, this time in the stomach. My breath went out in a whoosh, and I fought to continue speaking. "Waking up stiffer every morning, eating less, maybe not as strong as you used to be, right? Not as fast. You got to beat up on old dogs like Flatnose there, because if you try one of the younger ones, they'll take you down." The plan was working beautifully. Now all I had needed was for him to stalk out of the room to calm down or fetch an instrument of mayhem or some more duct tape, anything. Instead, Parker just spun on his heel, picked up a tire, and turned back to me, lifting it high. "Fuck Marcone," he snarled. "Fuck you, wizard." His muscles bunched beneath his old t-shirt as he raised the iron above his head. His eyes gleamed with the same sort of animalistic fury I had beheld in the other lycanthropes the night before. His mouth stretched into a federal grin, and I could see the cords in his neck standing out as he wound up to give me the death blow. I hate it when a plan falls apart. Chapter 23. I clenched my teeth and kicked my legs. The duct tape around my ankles gave way, but it was too late to do me any good. I didn't have time to get my weight beneath me to run, but I made the gesture in any case. Just one of those things you do when you're about to die, I guess. "Mr. Hendricks," came a very hard, very calm voice, "if Mr. Parker does not put down the tire iron in the next second or two, please shoot him dead." "Yes, sir, Mr. Marcone," Hendricks' rumbling basso answered. I looked over to my right to see gentleman Johnny Marcone standing at the door. In a grey Italian business suit, Hendricks stood in front of him and bit to one side in a much cheaper suit, holding a pump-action shotgun with a short barrel and stock worked into a pistol grip in his meaty paws. The gaping black mouth of the barrel was leveled at Parker's head. Parker's face snapped around to focus on Marcone at the same time mine did. Parker's jaws clenched and his eyes narrowed at the furious slits. His weight shifted from one foot to the other as though he were preparing to throw the tire iron. "That is a 12-gauge riot gun, Mr. Parker," Marcone said. "I am fully aware of your rather special endurance at this time of the month. Mr. Hendricks's weapon is loaded with solid slug ammunition, and after several rounds have torn literal pounds of flesh from your body and ruptured the majority of your internal organs, I am reasonably certain that even you would perish." Marcone smiled very politely while Hendricks clicked the safety off the weapon and settled his feet as though he expected the gun to knock him down. "Please," Marcone said, "put down the tire iron." Parker glanced back at me, and I could see the beast raging in his eyes, wanting to howl out and bathe in blood. It terrified me, made me go cold right through my gut and down through my loins. There was more fury and rage there than any of the members of the Street Wolves had demonstrated. Their own berserk losses of control had looked like child's tantrum next to what I saw in Parker's eyes, but he controlled it. He lowered his arm slowly and took 2 steps back from me, and I felt my breath whisper out in a sigh of relief. I wasn't dead yet. My kick hadn't quite dragged the blanket off of me, and I was still settled with my back against the steel post. They didn't know that I was loose underneath the rough wool. It wasn't much of an advantage, but it was all I had. I needed to find a way to use it, and fast. My people are coming, Parker growled. If you try any more of that heavy-handed shit, I'll have you torn apart. They are coming, Marcone agreed placidly, but they are not here yet. Their motorcycles have all suffered flat tires quite mysteriously. We have time to do business. I heard his shoes cross the concrete floor toward me, and I looked up at him. Marcone met my eyes without fear, a man in his mature prime, his hair immaculately graying at the temples, his custom-made suit displaying a body kept fit despite the advancing years, his eyes were the faded green of dollar bills and as opaque as mirrors. "Hi, John," I said. You've got good timing." Marcone smiled. "And you have a way with people, Dresden," he said, glancing at the silent Parker with unveiled amusement. "You must have read a book. I'm already reasonably certain as to your reaction, but I thought I would give you another chance." "Another chance to what?" "I received a phone call today. A Harley McFinn somehow discovered my personal number. He was quite irate. He said that he knew it was me who had destroyed his circle and set him up, and that he was going to deal with me tonight." "I'd say you've had it then, John. Harley can be fairly destructive." "Oh, I know. I saw the news programs from the station last night. Alup Guru, is he?" I blinked. "How did you—" Marcone waved a hand. "The report you gave to Lieutenant Murphy. Such things have to be paid for, and thus copied and filed and copied and filed. It wasn't hard to obtain a copy for myself." I shook my head. "Money isn't going to buy off Harley McFinn." "Quite," Marcone said. "And my parents, God rest their souls, were in no position to leave me anything, much less articles of silver, or I'd have dealt with him myself. I have no idea who told him that I had wronged him, or why, but it seems perfectly clear that he believes it, which brings us to you, Mr. Dresden." He reached into the expensive Italian jacket and drew out a folded sheaf of papers, the contract I'd seen before. "I want to make a deal with you." I stared at him in silence. "The same stipulations as before," Marcone continued. "In addition, I will promise you, give you my personal oath that I will see to it that the pressure is taken off Lieutenant Murphy. I do have some friends in the mayor's office, and I am certain something could be worked out." I started to tell him to go to hell, but bit back the words. I was trapped at the moment. If I ran, Parker would probably lose it and tear me apart, and if he didn't, Marcone would just point his finger, and the hulky Mr. Hendricks would put me down with a 12-gauge slug. And Murphy, in spite of recent misunderstandings, was my friend, or maybe it was more accurate to say that in spite of what had gone on lately, I was still Murphy's friend, saving her job, getting the pressure off the politicians off of her. Isn't that why I'd gotten involved in this to begin with? Wouldn't Murphy thank me for helping her? No, I thought, not like that. She wouldn't want that kind of help. Magic she could accept. Help for money generated by human suffering, graft, and deception was a different story. Marcone looked good in his gray suit and his perfect hair and his manicured hands, but he wasn't. My own hands weren't clean, but they were free. Things were desperate and was getting worse the longer I waited. Maybe I could pull off enough magic to get myself out of this. I drew in a breath and focused on a pile of loose tools and metal parts on a workbench 20 feet away. I gathered together threads of will, feeling the pressure build up with a sort of skewed intangibility to it. Something I'd never felt before. I focused on my goal, on the rush of air that would lift the tools and parts and hurl them at Marcone, Parker, and Hendricks like so many bullets. And I prayed that I wouldn't catch myself in the edges of it by accident and get myself killed. I'd be breaking the first law of magic if one of them died. And I might have to deal with White Council later, but hell's bells, I did not want to die on that concrete floor. My head pounded and I pushed the pain aside, focused, and breathed out. Ventos Servitas. Fire erupted behind my eyes. The pain was blinding, and I sucked in a breath and bowed my head forward, struggling not to fall to one side and reveal my lack of duct-tapedness. Oh, stars, it hurt like hell, and I clenched my teeth to keep from crying out. My chest heaved and strained to give me enough breath. I blinked tears out of my eyes and straightened again, facing Marcone. I didn't want him to see the weakness. I didn't want him to know that my magic had failed. Interesting, Marcone said, glancing at the workbench and then back at me. Perhaps you've been working too hard, he suggested, but I'm still willing to make that offer, Mr. Dresden. Otherwise, you understand, I have no interest in your well-being, and I will be forced to leave you here with Mr. Parker and his associates. If you do not come to work for me, you'll die. I glared up at Marcone and gathered in a breath to spit out a curse at him. To hell with him and his whole stinking breed of parasites, polite and smiling bastards who didn't care about the lives they ruined, the people they destroyed. So long as business continued as usual, if I was going to die here, I was going to lay out a curse on Marcone that would make the grimmest of old fairy tales you ever heard sound like pleasant daydreams. And then I glanced at Parker, who was glaring suspiciously at Marcone, and stifled the curse as well. I lowered my head to hide my expression from Marcone. I had an idea. He dies anyway, Parker growled. He's mine. You never said anything about him leaving with you. Marcone stood, his mouth settled in a tight smile. Don't start with me, Parker, Marcone said. I'll take what I want to take. Last chance, Mr. Dresden. This wasn't part of the deal. I need him. I'll kill you before I let you take him. Parker put one hand behind his back as though scratching an itch. I glanced over toward the office door behind him and saw Flatnose crouched there in the doorway, mostly shielded by the door and unnoticed. Perfect. You needn't worry, Parker, Marcone said, his tone satisfied. He won't accept my offer. He'd rather die. I lifted up my head and kept my expression as blank as I could. Give me a pen, I said. Marcone's mouth dropped open, and it was an intense pleasure to see the surprise on his face. What? He said. I enunciated each word carefully. Give me a pen. I'll sign your contract. I glanced aside at Parker and said more loudly, anything to get away from these animals. Marcone stared at me for a moment and then reached toward his pocket. I could see his eyes, see him searching my expression. The gears were spinning in his head as he tried to work out what I was doing. Parker let out a sudden scream of rage and hurled the tire iron at Hendricks, who dodged to one side too quickly for a man his size and lifted his weapon. The office door exploded open and Flatnose threw himself onto the big man. They both went down to the concrete, struggling for possession of the shotgun. The wizard's mine! Parker howled and threw himself at Marcone. Marcone moved like a snake in his zillion-dollar business suit and made a curved knife appear in his hands. He swept in an arc that was followed by a spray of blood from Parker's wrist, and the lycanthrope howled. I got up and ran like hell to the door. My legs were shaking. My balance wasn't great, but I was moving again, and I thought I had a fair chance of getting away. Over to my left, there was the roar of the shotgun going off in a wet red spray that went all over one wall in the ceiling. I didn't stop to see who had been killed, just jerked to open the door. Agent Philip Denton stood 5 feet away from me in the cold mist of autumn rain. The veins in his forehead were throbbing, and his short hair was frosted by the mist. He was flanked by the pot-bellied Agent Wilson in his rumpled suit, his mostly bald head shining by the lean, savage-looking woman, Ben, her dark skin even darker in the evening's gloom and the glow of the streetlights, her sensuous mouth peeling back into a startled snarl. Denton blinked in surprise and then narrowed his intensely gray eyes. The wizard mustn't escape, he said, his voice commonplace. Kill him. Ben's eyes gleamed, and she hissed something under her breath while reaching a hand into her jacket. Wilson did the same. I brought my forward momentum into a sudden halt, fell, and started scrambling back into the building. But instead of drawing guns out of the jackets, they changed. It happened fast, nothing like you see in the movies. One moment there was 2 human beings standing there, and the next there was a flicker of shouting. A pair of enormous gaunt wolves, one the gray of Ben's mane, and one the same as Brown's. The same brown as Wilson's receding hairline. They were huge, 6 feet long, not including the tail, as high as my belly at their shoulders. Their entirely human eyes shone, as did their bared fangs. Denton stood between them, his eyes gleaming with some sort of dark breed of joy, and then he hissed, throwing his hands toward me as though he had thrown by the motion. Both rolls hurled forward. I flung myself back through the door and slammed it closed. There were heavy thuds as the wolves hit the door behind me. I saw a motion to my right and threw myself down just before Hendricks pulled the trigger. The riot gun belched forth flame and huge sound and blew a hole the size of my face in the door behind me. I could still hear Parker's furious snarling somewhere in the dark, and I scrambled forward behind the bulk of a car, then ran toward the back of the cavernous garage, staying low. Outside there was a sudden thunder of dozen engines and the sharp, heavy sounds of gunfire. Evidently street wolves had returned. I stumbled through the darkness and tried not to make enough sound to give someone the chance to shoot me. The door flew open at the front of the garage, letting in a flood of dim light that didn't help me much. I heard people screaming. I reached the back corner and sank down into it and grabbed at something that turned out to be a toolbox. I came out with a heavy wrench and gripped it tightly. I was alone. I'd hurt myself using too much of my magic while on the go-go potion, and I didn't have anything left to throw next except the wrench in my hands. I was unarmed. All around me in the garage there was sounds of gunshots and screams and thuds of flesh as the animals fought for control of the jungle. Excuse me. It was only a matter of time before one of them stumbled across a weakened and exhausted wizard named Harry Dresden. Talk about frying pans and fires. I'm actually going to pause right there for a nice drink break because I'm getting hoarse and it's about to hit an ad break. So. I'm actually putting my glasses back on so I can actually see. I'm just pausing for just a moment. I still have a few. I don't know. I may not end up not making my go, but I'm going to try. I'm just using this time as the ad break is about to be upon us. Oh. I'm just scanning to see what all is going on. I usually take that time to kind of look over stuff. And it is already 20 till 3, and I have not made, like I said, we're on chapter 24 of 29. I try to do about 10 chapters a stream. I try to. I wasn't exactly prepared. Taking very big gulps from my citrus jug. I hope everybody's enjoying the reading. Appreciate that those of you that are lurking continue to do so. That's fine. If you want to take this ad break to get up, stretch, get your own beverage, feel free. Unfortunately, ad breaks are necessary to streaming, unfortunately, but I try to make it as painless as possible. Like I said, I am planning on doing a little bit of Dead Island 2 setup, unless I already have it set up, which would be great. And if it is, I'll just gonna go with it and move on to Crime Scene Cleaner. If not, we will be spending some of this time getting the tutorial done, and so it'll be open for multiplayer, because you have to go through the first bit in order to get. Unlike multiplayer, I just made myself hiccup. That's lovely. Yes, it looks rather wet outside. I do believe that it's raining for reals, not just in the sound effects here. Let me check my weather right quick. Yes, it is raining right now. It's like 64 degrees. It's very cool and stuff. Let me check the yeah, we're supposed to basically have a thunderstorm roll through here, and thunderstorm roll in later tonight too, so I'm just happy that it's fucking cooled off. It's gonna be actually cold at night. I may actually stop running my fan in here, which I unlike some people, I don't run a fan constantly when it's cold weather, because I actually get colder if I do that. Plus, I've heard say that starting October 1st, they're actually going to start charging us more between 5 and 9, which is fucking bullshit, for power used during that time. So I don't think that my laptop and my TV and my Xbox is really going to make that big of an impact on like days that I do movies and Raw and that sort of thing. I'm not going to shut everything down between 5 and 9 just because they, oh, by the way, we're going to charge you about 75 cents more per hour. And I'm like, you know what? You can fuck right off. I'm like, I never understand that. I'm not trying to get into a rant in the middle of this, I promise. I'm not going to. But maybe during the Dead Island stuff, I may actually bring it up again. Because I think it's fucking bullshit. But then again, there's been a lot of bullshit that's happened with me, but I'm not going to break the flow of things for that bullshit. And by the way, I know some people might be questioning my choice of voices for Marcone, but for some reason, let's see, when is it? October 7th. Oh, okay. For some reason, Raymond Reddington came to mind when I think of Marcone. Even though Marcone's definitely your... Well, I have two ideas of gangsters in my head. And I don't want to do the old 1940s to 1960s version because I feel like that's insulting, you know, the Edward G. Robinson version. You know, yeah, see, yeah. I think that's a bit silly. So, well, see, and maybe she did that to yourself, son. What are you trying to do, baby, other than hurt yourself? You big goober. Come here. Here. Come here. You okay? You got your claw hung in my frickin' chair because you're being silly. Ow! That's it. Don't put holes in my shirt. You okay, Bubba? You seem to be. You want to talk to people during the break? Oh, now I'm paying you attention. Now you don't like it. Talk to the people. Give them the purrs. That's what they want. Ha-ha. My little man. He seems to be okay. He's just being needy and greedy. I'm going to refund you that back, Trav, by the way. Hi. Because his treats are across the room. Sorry about that, but when I get up to take my break, and also I don't want to break the flow of things too. When I get up to take my break after we get done reading today, you can always redo that, and I'll grab it as I come back through. It's just the way the shit's set up right now, man. Trust me, if you knew what I was going through, he gets plenty of treats. Don't let him fool you. It's just I can't keep him up here because, well, there's just not enough room. Back when his food was right next to my, desk, it was easier. But anyway, let me divest myself of my spectacles, and I am going to continue reading. But we will attend to the Anubis needs later. I just wanted to refer. Snoop boots for Anubis. Okay, like I said, I'll take care of it. Anyway, settling back down here. Make sure my mic's on. Everything. Chapter 24. It couldn't get possibly any worse than this, I thought. I cowered in the corner, clutching my captured wrench like a child's teddy bear, with no way out and full of the knowledge that my magic had failed me. Oddly, that thought troubled me more than the probable death. A lot more. Death was something that happened to everyone, only the timing is different for each of us. I knew that I would eventually die. Hell, I even knew I might die horribly. But I had never thought the magic would fail me. More accurately, I had never guessed that I might fail it. I had pushed too hard, and my body wouldn't conduct the power I needed to utilize the forces I was accustomed to commanding. Granted, I should have started with something smaller than a large violent telekinesis, but the indication was there that I had burned out some internal circuitry. It might not ever come back. It was a loss of identity. I was a wizard. It was more than just a job, more than just a title. Wizardry was the core of my being. It was the relationship with my magic, the way I used it, the things that it let me do that defined me, shaped me, gave me purpose. I dwelled on these things while Death danced over the concrete floor, clutching them like a sailor clinging onto the wreckage of his ship. Trying to ignore the storm that blasted it to pieces, I noticed peripheral details from my pathetic hiding place. Marcone had made a break for one of the garage doors, only to be pinned down by a rusted truck by gunfire from some of the street wolves. Hendricks joined him, and a moment later the truck roared to life and crashed out through the garage door into the gravel parking lot. Hendricks, in the rear of the truck, fired several blasts from the big shotgun back into the building while the street wolves sat around skewing off after the truck. The real battle, though, took place between the street wolves and the FBI. It was largely a gunfight. Denton was armed with his FBI-issue automatic and what looked like an Uzi submachine gun. He cut down 3 of the lycanthropes with a swath fire from his automatic weapon as he came in through the door, and 2 great wolves with him hurled into the darkness. Screams and savage snarling erupted from the shadows, and I could hear more of the lycanthropes dying, being torn apart by the enormous wolves that had once been Agents Ben and Wilson. Parker screamed orders somewhere in the dark, half incoherent with rage. Denton reached into his jacket for a fresh clip for the Uzi, and I saw something across his belly, and I noted for future reference, should I have any future. I watched the killing, and I hid, and I prayed that there would be an opportunity to flee toward the open doors of the garage before Denton and Parker noticed me. It went on forever. Oh, I knew in some rational part of my brain that only seconds were going by, but it felt like days. I was terrified, and my head and my body hurt, and I couldn't use magic to protect myself. There was a sound near my ankle, and my heart leapt out of my throat. I flinched violently away from it. The sound repeated itself in a continued scrabble of noise. The floor, I noticed, was rough dirt and broken concrete in this corner, where the foundation platform was flawed. The scrabbling noise came from the very base of the wall, where the dirt was stirring and moving. Something was trying to dig its way beneath the wall and into the garage, practically right underneath my butt. I felt a chill of fear, followed swiftly by anger at the thing that added to an already overabundant flow of adrenaline. I clutched my makeshift weapon in hand and moved to crouch over the source of the disturbance, lifting in preparation to strike at whatever came through. I saw in the dimness there was no mistaking the shape. A paw, a huge canine paw, scrabbled at the earth, digging out a shallow hole beneath the wall. Frustrated by bits of concrete that got in the way, between shots I could hear animal sounds outside, panting whimpers of eagerness, it seemed. Whatever was out there wanted to dig its way inside, and it wanted it bad. "Dig this," I muttered, and swung the wrench down on the paw hard. There was an instant yelp of pain, and the paw jerked its way from out beneath the corrugated metal wall. It was followed by a snarl, and the paw appeared again, whereupon I slammed the wrench down, and once more with similar results. I heard a furious snarling sound from the other side, and I released a small surge of vindictive satisfaction by leaning down close enough to the hole and say, "Ha! Bring another one in here, and I'll give you the same." I heard sounds outside for a moment, and then a crunch of gravel and Tara West's smooth, unmistakable voice. "Wizard," she hissed, "stop that." I blinked, startled, and leaned down close to the hole. "Tara, is that you? How did you know it was me?" "You're the only man I ever met," Tara growled, "who has smashed the paws that are trying to free you from certain death." I flinched at another burst of gunfire from the far side of the garage. "I'm going to tell them to dig again. Do not strike at their paws." "Them?" I demanded. "Them who?" But she didn't answer me. Instead, the scrabbling sounds began again. I looked over my shoulder at the rest of the room. I saw street wolves moving swiftly through the door and the gaping hole Marcone had left in the garage door when he escaped. In a flash of automatic muzzle fire, I saw Denton standing over the form of a lanky woman and firing down into it, apparently making absolutely certain she would never rise again. I had enough time to recognize Lana's face, and I screwed up a pain rather than bloodlust. Her body jerked and twitched as Denton emptied the remainder of the clip into her, and then everything went dark again. By my feet, the scrabbling sounds continued and then broke off in a yelp. I heard a series of vicious snarls and yelps from the half-dug hole beneath the wall, and I cursed. "Tara," I whispered loudly as I did, "what's going on?" There was only more growling for answer and a sharp yelp that carried to the far side of the garage. I threw myself flat behind the toolbox in a pile of junk just before a flashlight beam swept over the corner where I had been hiding. "It's that bitch," Denton snarled. "Roger's got her outside." There was a whispering sound, a tingling feeling along my spine, and then a throaty, sensual female voice purred. "Parker's still in here. So is that wizard. I can smell them." "Damn it," Denton growled. "This wizard knows too much. Wilson, go help Roger." "What about me, lover?" The female voice said. A husky laugh added to the end. Agent Ben sounded like she had just had too much sex, drugs, and rock and roll, was hungry for more. "You and I stay here. I'll cover the doors. Flush them toward me." There was a mewling sound of pleasure from the woman. "Come with me," she urged. "Change. You know you love it so much. You know how good it feels." I could visualize Denton's veins throbbing. Smarter for one of us to cover the door with a gun, but there was sort of heavy reluctance to his tone. "Fuck smart," Ben purred. "Come with me. Change." It's not why we did this, not why we made the bargain. Ben made another sound, utterly sexual in nature. It doesn't matter now. Taste it, she urged him. Taste the blood. The light wavered and dropped from the corner where I hid. I chanced to look up. Agent Ben, spattered in gore, stood before Denton and watched a flashlight from the floor. She had three of her fingers pressed together and was sliding them between his lips. Denton was shaking, and his eyes were squeezed tightly closed. He suckled at her fingers, something frighteningly erotic in the motion. One of the huge gaunt beasts from earlier, Wilson, I suppose, stood nearby, watching the pair of them with gleaming eyes. Denton made a growling sound and grasped Ben by her mane of graying hair, jerking her chin up so that he could nuzzle and lick at the blood smeared over her throat. She laughed and arched into him, her hips undulating against him in urgent motions. Change, she moaned. Change. Do it. There was a howl of rage and a flash of motion, and Parker staggered from the darkness, one arm dangling uselessly, a heavy knife in his other hand, and defiance and insane anger in his glazed eyes. Denton and Ben looked up, and they reached their waists, flickered, and changed into a pair of the nightmare-sized wolves, their eyes glowing in the ambient light, jaws dropping open, revealing long tongues and vicious fangs. Parker lurched forward, greasy hair flying. The three wolves leapt upon him. I stared in sort of a sickened fascination. The wolves buried him under a mound of fangs and fur and blood in absolute fury. He screamed, the knife flailing, and then was cast aside out of his hands to land spinning on the floor not far from me. Parker tried to fight, tried to struggle up and kick, but it was hopeless. There were flashes of blood, and he screamed again and went still. Then the wolves started to eat him. They bit off chunks of muscle and gulped them down, ripping aside clothing to get to more meat. They snarled and snapped at one another, and one of the males mounted the female, as though even as she continued to tear at the body, burned her muzzle down through the layers of stomach muscle to get at the vitals. My gorge rose, and if I'd had anything in my stomach, I would have emptied it onto the concrete floor. Instead, I turned back to the half-finished hole in the floor and started digging out with my wrench, frantic. I didn't want to be the next thing on the menu. There were more yelps from outside, more growls, and I opened the hole enough, and I thought I might be able to get out. I flattened myself down and wormed my way into the dirt, the corrugated metal scraping at my back, my wounded shoulder paining me again. I jerked my way out into the open air to find myself in an alley behind the garage, dimly lit by a distant street light. There were wolves everywhere. 3 wolves smaller than the ones I'd seen before were spreading in a loose ring about a great russet-furred beast with bat-like ears. The great wolf's coat was spattered with blood, and 2 of the smaller wolves lay nearby, yelping in pain, stirring weakly, blood matting their coats. Tara was part of the ring around the great beast as well, naked and lean, a length of pipe held in either hand. When the great wolf turned toward one of the others, the rest would begin to close around him, and he would spin, jaws flashing, trying to pin down one of those who encircled him. You took your time, wizard, Tara snarled without looking back at me. I got to my feet, wrench in hand, and shook my head to clear off cold sweat. Tara said, "We've got to get out of here. Denton and the others will be coming." "Go," she responded. "Help McFinn, and we will hold them." The great russet wolf lunged at her, and she skittered back, coolly staying a hair's breadth from his fangs. She fetched him a sharp blow across the nose with more speed than I could have believed, and a contemptuous snort. The 3 smaller wolves rushed the great beast, and he spun to drive them back and away from him, drawing a yelp from one that wasn't swift enough to entirely evade his jaws. "You can't stop them all," I said. There's 3 more like this one." "Their pack on the ground," she snarled, and jerked her head toward the wounded wolves. "We do not abandon our own." I let out an acid curse. I needed Tara. She could confirm everything. She helped me sort out all my facts and make sure I understood what was going on. She was offering to give her life for me, to stay and occupy Denton and the others as long as she had her compatriots could. But I had seen enough people dying already tonight. I wasn't accepting another loss on my behalf. And I was abruptly more furious than afraid. I'd been run around and treated like a piece of baggage or a choice item on the menu long enough. I'd flailed around in the dark and been helpless and ineffective for way too long. Too many people had been hurt, too much suffering caused by creatures of magic and might and the night, and things that I should have been handling. It didn't matter to me at that moment that I couldn't work any of my spells against them. I might not have any magic available to me, but that didn't make me any less of a wizard, one of the magi, the wise. That's the true power of a wizard. I know things. Knowledge is power. With power comes responsibility. That made the entire thing pretty simple. I clutched the wrench in my hand, took a deep breath, and threw myself forward at the great wolf's back. The huge wolf sensed me coming, spun with abrupt speed, and met me in the air. It slammed me down to the concrete and bent its jaws toward my throat. I heard Tara cry out as she and the other wolves moved forward, but they would never have been able to get the thing before it killed me. That wasn't the point. I jammed the wrench into the wolf's jaws, feeling some teeth tear at one of my fingers. As I did, the wolf snarled and jerked the wrench out of my hands. It spun end over end away from me, and the great beast turned back toward me, its eyes glowing. I had time to watch it all in great detail. The wolf's power, its speed, simply shocked me. It was huge, quick, and I didn't have a prayer against it. The distant street light gleamed off its reddened fangs as muzzle sped toward my throat. Dun, dun, dun. I should just leave off right there and just make y'all go, I mean, technically it is 2 hours, so you know what? That's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave y'all with a cliffhanger today. And it's not quite 10 chapters, but given the fact that it is 33, 34 chapters, yeah, that will make the next session, the last section of Full Moon. That will actually give me 10 chapters. So, yeah, you guys get left on the cliffhanger this time. Bear with me 1 moment while I reapply my eyeballs. Having to readjust shit. I am so sorry. I keep having to readjust things. But that is part 3 of Full Moon. We're going to do that that's going to be it for today for the reading part of the session. And I appreciate everybody lurking and hanging out and being cozy. That's what this little section's all about. I am going to get up and take a quick BRB and section off this section of the stream just for this. When I get back, we're going to make a shift in gears. We're going to do some Dead Island 2 to get that prepped and ready for multiplayer. Hopefully we'll have enough time to hit Crime Scene Cleaner as soon as we get back from that too. Because I kind of want to dip into the nightmare stuff because it is kind of spooky. It is the nightmare level since I did finally finish the game on stream, by the way. Basically, to kind of give you, I'll give you a synopsis of everything when I get back. But I hope you guys have enjoyed the third part of the reading today. Sorry to leave you on such a cliffhanger, but given the fact this isn't the last book, so that kind of tells you that he does somehow survive this. But you'll have to tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel to find out what happens next. And I'll be right back, guys.